G'day there guys, Connor here again, and we're back with some more stories from Reddit. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. Anyway, hit like and subscribe and all that stuff, and let's get straight into it. Okay, this one was posted on Wedding Drama. It was written by user Matryoshka Surprise, and it's titled Uninviting Someone We Never Actually Invited in the Very First Place. So my fiancé, 34 male, Mike, has an acquaintance, Jen, female, early 30s. It's looking like we'll have to uninvite her, though she was never actually invited to our wedding to begin with. We know Jen through mutual friends, but in our wider social circle she's on the fringe for a series of things that happened years before we were around, but they weren't great. Jen is in a relationship that's pretty serious. They're moving in together. Despite that, she's made it clear that she has a crush on Mike. There was a period of time where she was text bombing Mike constantly. On the most active days, she sent him 50 plus messages. She was trying to flirt in places. He responded to hardly any of it, letting her know that he was busy at work and didn't have the time to talk. Mike does not reciprocate these feelings and declined any sort of in-person, one-on-one interaction when she asked to meet up for drinks after work, alone. He shared the message threads with me because he saw the red flags and didn't want to end up in a situation where there was any room for doubt. When things were less obvious and awkward, she tried to arrange double date nights, but we generally made excuses and declined. The one time we went out with them on a double date, she made an ass of herself at the restaurant by a gross display of PDA with her partner, and trying to dive into sex talk with kids within earshot at the table next to us. All of us, including her partner, let her know that we weren't comfortable with where she was pushing the conversation, and she pouted and said we weren't any fun. Yes, she had been drinking. She made a big show of wanting to be girlfriends with me to my face with Mike present, but I've never heard from her once and she hasn't made any effort. I have no idea what her partner knows about or thinks of all of this. This past weekend, we learned that Jen has been telling others in our social circle that she's invited to our wedding, when she never was, and is asking about our gift registry. We don't have one. We're having a tiny ceremony with less than 10 people present, and a bigger catered party, but the guest list is still less than 50. Based on cost, and our friend's backyard isn't large enough to comfortably host more than that. But even if we weren't having an intentionally tiny wedding, she still would not be invited because neither of us considered her an actual friend. She's hurt that she wasn't invited to his stag party, which is just a board game night, but she was never a consideration. She's also complained that I overlooked her when having a shower or the bachelorette. I didn't even have a shower because we already own a home and are established, and I have zero reason to invite her to anything because we're not friends, and she's been disrespectful. 2 separate friends let us know that Jen is telling this tale. One of them tried to understand why she's lying about this by keeping it breezy and playing dumb, but she kept evading answering questions about it. My guess is she's telling people all of this for 2 reasons. 1, she believes that she and Mike are friends and her feelings are hurt, and 2, she's possibly trying to ferret out the details and location of the ceremony and the party. We generally don't think anyone we invited would share this information with her, given the general history in the social group. There's a chance she could manipulate it out of someone though. Needless to say, we think we've gotten to the point where we need to have a direct conversation with Jen over text, so there's no confusion that she's not invited, and what she is doing is just, well, bizarre. We don't think we need to tell anyone connected to the wedding locations that she's specifically not invited at this moment, but we will if we need to. We mostly think she won't try to show up anyway. After the conversation, the plan is to block her on social media and messaging platforms. Is this unhinged? Yes. Should I have to devote any energy or time to a 30-something-year-old woman who behaves this way? No. Is this totally absurd? Yes. Does she need serious help? Definitely yes. Oh, geez, yeah, OP's really got to shut this person down. How do you do that? Not really sure. Let's go to the comments. I would nip this in the bud. No more hanging out, no more texting, even block and delete. But I would first tell her that she is not invited. Maybe along the lines of, I need to clear something up. We were told that you've been saying you're invited to our wedding. We do not want you to be embarrassed, but there is no invitation. Do not apologize or make excuses. Just you are not invited. It is clear and to the point. Block and delete right after that. OP replies, oh, believe me, we haven't hung out directly with her since early 2024. When we do see her, which is rare, it's at birthday parties or other mutual social circle gatherings. She tried to organise a few more double dates after the first one, but we just kept politely declining. Mike hasn't blocked her and I haven't blocked her because I think we both thought she would get over this and move on, and if we gave it any attention it would encourage her. Obviously, we were wrong. But yeah, otherwise we're totally on the same page. We just never thought we'd have to have this conversation with anyone. You're going to have to be blunt, and frankly it wouldn't be best if it comes from your fiancé. Can he do it? Opie says he's willing to, wants to, and suggested it, but he wants me present for the conversation but plans to lead it. We both like the idea of this being a unified front, and there being no question that this message is coming from both of us. I don't really plan on saying much to her. I could get loud and insulting, I guess, but it'll just feed into a label about being the territorial, jealous partner. I generally don't think it matters what I do. She's going to label me however she wants, and I can't control it. The people that know us and love us in our friend circle both know us, so I'm not too concerned about perceptions about being perceived poorly. If anything, she is, and has been for a while. The home-wrecking vibe is new, but not surprising. I would make it known to the group that she is not invited, never was, and anyone who hears her say something to the contrary is welcome to clear it up for her. This woman is causing drama for the fun of it, and people are just allowing her, just to keep the peace. She says it's true, and that's our fault. We also just didn't think it would go this way. Most of our friends, especially our close friends, don't act this way, and she's so outside our daily sphere that it just didn't occur to us that there was any more brewing in the background. Okay, now for an update, 3 months later. It's been a while to get back to this. I'm not terribly active on Reddit, and summer has been really busy, on top of the final detail planning around the wedding. A while back, I posted about having to uninvite my soon-to-be husband's acquaintance, Jen, even though she was never invited and would never be invited. The background context is that Jen was interested in Mike, and making it pretty obvious, despite being in a committed relationship herself. Mike wasn't interested back, and in the interest of not embarrassing Jen, thought that if he kept politely showing no reciprocation, that she would let the crush run its course and then move on. Instead, she started telling mutual friends a made-up story that we had invited her when we hadn't, and also complaining that she'd never been invited to the stag or bachelorette parties, despite a lack of friendship with either of us. We weren't all that concerned about her crashing the wedding, which is still several months now, but replies to my original post did press upon us both that we should actually be more concerned. We did take those comments to heart, and set up measures with vendors to prevent her attempt to meddle with aspects of the wedding. The owner of the venue, which is just our friend's backyard, agrees that she likely won't show up, especially now, but he has various things in place to monitor the situation, including voice and movement-activated home security cameras on the property that would alert him if she showed up at the bottom of the driveway. The way the house, yard, etc. are configured, she doesn't really have another option to get in but through the house, and she wouldn't make it that far. The conversation with Jen happened. A friend of ours tripped going up the stairs in her home and broke her wrist that morning. Her husband was out of town at the time, and she needed someone to drive her to the ER, so I went with her. Mike added me as a third to the text conversation, so while I was there I just wasn't able to be active on it. I caught up to it when it was basically over while I was in the waiting room. Mike opened by just wanting to understand if there was some kind of misunderstanding and the rumour mill at work, and noted the confusion it was causing. I really thought Jen would object to my being in the conversation, but she didn't bring it up and feigned concern about the stress that was being created by these rumours. He pointed out that 2 separate people both noted that she'd lodged complaints about being excluded from the pre-wedding celebrations, and also that she'd been invited to our wedding to them. Jen denied it all at first. She insisted that she had not spoken to at least one of them at all, and that whatever she said to the other was probably a misunderstanding. Her version of things was that she understood she hadn't been invited to our wedding, and assumed her exclusion was based on expense. She also said she didn't expect to actually be invited to any pre-wedding events because it would be weird, in her opinion, to have a girl present at an all-male bachelor party because she assumed it would be events involving a strip club or related sex work. As an aside, Mike's actual stag party is a board game night because that's one of the hobbies that gives him a lot of joy, and he's sex positive but strip clubs aren't his thing. But he didn't get into any of that. Instead, he just responded that he chose an activity that he liked doing. It had nothing to do with sex workers or invitee gender, and he was intentionally keeping it small. Mike's response to the wedding invite denial was to show her screenshots of conversations with the people who brought this to our attention. They had given full permission to share that with her. Jen's tone immediately shifted, and she started insisting on moving to video chat. Mike didn't want to do that and declined. She kept on denying, at that point, what she had said, insisted those folks were lying to us and causing drama, and was getting increasingly upset. All caps typing and a lot of exclamation marks being used. That there were people in our social group who would never let her move on from the past and were out to get her. Mike responded that he was sorry if that was the case. He didn't hold those sentiments. He wasn't even around when all that went down, but he wanted to emphasize 2 points. 1, he wanted to make it absolutely clear and certain that an invitation to the wedding was not on the table, and 2, while he considered them friendly, his takeaway from their interactions was that she was interested in him in a way that he was not going to reciprocate, and if he had somehow misread her intentions there was at least a desire for a friendship that he didn't feel was appropriate to pursue with her, because much of what she wanted to talk about, as a friend, was talk awkward and inappropriate, given that he doesn't really know her and he's engaged and she has a long-term partner. At that point, she kept reiterating how no one will ever let her move on from 10 years ago, and she was really upset that no one will recognize her efforts at changing or growth, and that the wider social group went out of their way to bully people who are neurodivergent. She didn't provide a response or apology for making things uncomfortable and awkward around the flirting attempts. He started to tell her that it was probably a good idea to end this conversation, since it didn't seem like they were going to resolve this, but she beat him to it by blocking him. A few days later, Mike got a few messages from her partner, who was upset and concerned that Jen, based on what he was hearing, was being attacked and bullied by us because of her checkered past in the group. Honestly, the guy was just trying to defend her, which I get, and he wasn't around for those events, so I don't know what Jen has told him that happened, but I generally assume by the messages he sent, Jen has misrepresented the past to him as well. Mike thanked him for reaching out, said he understood that he was acting protectively towards Jen, and asked him what the partner understood about everything. The partner repeated a version of what Jen had told people, that her good friend Mike was being a bad friend by excluding her and allowing other people in the group to bully her by proxy about being autistic and past behaviour, and that we had abruptly uninvited her because I had decided she was a threat and I was jealous of her. Mike set him as straight as he could by explaining that he never considered Jen a close friend, friendly at best, and that he wasn't even around for everything that happened years ago, so whatever opinions he had of Jen were his own, and not entirely informed by the past. He also made it clear that Jen had never been invited to the wedding in the first place, and had let her know that. He also shared that Jen had been inappropriate in her communication with him, with what he took as overt attempts to flirt with him, including text and flirty emojis and asking him to meet up one-on-one. He offered to share those messages with him. Jen's partner asked to see some of it. Mike shared, probably the more obviously blatant stuff. The partner didn't really say much after that, just thanked Mike for what he shared, and the conversation just kinda died. We haven't heard from him since, but my guess is our version of events really didn't match hers, and the jig was kinda up. Jen has made some vague posts on social media about being betrayed and misunderstood, but Mike didn't take the bait on any of it and hasn't responded. He hasn't blocked her on Instagram because he wants to keep tabs on things for a bit, but she's mostly back to her usual content, selfies. About a month later, we ended up running into her at a birthday party. She didn't really say anything to either of us, but didn't look happy to see us. We kept our distance and kept it cordial. No drama resulted. No word on her partner. All I know is he didn't come with her that night. We weren't going to ask. What happened 10 years ago? Some backstory, otherwise it's confusing. A woman in our social circle starts dating this guy. I'll call him Dean. They date for almost a year. She gets a job out of state and they decide they don't want to do long distance, so she moves and they break up. Dean, in the meantime, has made his own friendships with a bunch of people and is now considered part of the group. A little while after, he meets Jen at a bar and they start dating and she makes friends and then also becomes part of this larger social circle. Dean is in the military and he gets assigned overseas. Jen and Dean try to make it work for a little while, but long distance is too hard and they break up. Jen stays local and friends with people. So that's the backstory. After the breakup, there's a girls' trip where people get pretty drunk and the conversation turns to the weirder things that they're all into in bed. When it's Jen's turn, she admits that she and Dean had a thing where they'd pick up another woman at a bar or whatever, and then Jen would hook up with this woman while Dean watched them. I guess Dean would leave the room or whatever and pretend to go to bed. They would never tell this woman what was really happening. I don't know how many times that had happened, but it was a few, according to Jen. This does not go over well. A few of the women get angry and tell Jen how incredibly messed up this is. Jen is totally surprised that people are mad at her and doesn't understand this is really gross, messed up behavior. It's a huge deal. A bunch of people stop speaking to Jen and she's effectively pushed out of the social group. She's very upset, very apologetic, but doesn't understand still why this is gross and terrible. Finally, a couple people basically told her that if she wants any hope of trying to salvage some of this, she needs to get into therapy and understand why this is so messed up. She allegedly went and allegedly seemed to get it, improve, make amends, etc., which is why a few people in the group still invite her to stuff. I guess in that process, that's how she was diagnosed as having autism. But there are definitely other people in this group who don't see her working on herself as contingent as anything. That it's good that she did, but it doesn't change what happened, and they didn't want to be friends. I would say that no one is out and out mean or rude to her these days. She just doesn't get invited to things, and people are cordial but standoffish. I think there was a general assumption that she'd get the hint and stop showing up to things, even if she was invited by people more willing to look past this. She's still pretty hurt that some people won't look past this. I wasn't living here when all this happened, and I didn't know anyone involved. I wouldn't be likely to look past it either. And some final comments. So, Jen got in trouble with the group for not understanding boundaries and consent, and got herself in trouble again because of not understanding boundaries and consent, but can't understand why people dislike her. Yeah, no growth has happened. Sometimes I wish I had a wider social circle, but then I come here and read all about friend group drama and feel content. I used to have a wider college-adjacent group, and there was definitely a point I realised I was only friends with some of these people due to proximity rather than actual connection, some of which were just drama-filled or awful. Friend group is a lot smaller these days, and honestly a lot better for my mental health. I hate that Jen decided to say she was being bullied for being neurodivergent when that's clearly not the case. I did wonder if she was not able to pass the social interactions with the fiancé. That's like autism in a nutshell. Not being able to read the room occasionally. However, I've met folks that I suspect are narcissists that use that tone-deaf, socially grey misunderstanding situation to continue with their own agenda to the detriment of others. However, picking up women at bars and not communicating and letting them consent, that's not an autism thing. If you posted that was happening in an autism sub, especially a women's autism sub, everyone would be up in arms about it too. Black and white thinking and a penchant for justice runs deep there. I don't know where I'm going with that, but while I am happy different neurodivergent diagnoses are out there for people to understand themselves, I also feel like bad actors, like Jen, also take advantage of it to try and get out of the consequences. It sounds like Jen thinks she's the protagonist of a rom-com when she's barely an extra in Opie and Mike's life. Yeah, that's a pretty accurate way of putting it. Some people really do think they're the main character in your life, huh? Anyway guys, we're going to leave that story there. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, moving on to another one. Okay, jumping over to Petty Revenge. This one was written by user GovernmentEther3420, and it's titled, I waited years for my chance. We had an executive at our company who would go out of his way to screw over people if there was the slightest chance he might be blamed for something. He did it to me once and made me look incompetent to our CEO. His admin assistant actually cried when she told me what he had done. Years later, the guy finally retired. Guess who was assigned to host his retirement party? He had attended an Ivy League university back when it had been part of a weird long-term study of body types and intelligence where all incoming freshmen had to allow themselves to be photographed in the nude. Yes, that was a real thing that happened. I took this bit of info and had a graphics person put the executive's face on a nearly nude, small speedo guy posing on a beach and made a big poster for everyone to sign. I presented it to him saying, "We found your freshman photo," when everyone gathered in the employee cafeteria to wish him well. Cue hysterical laughter. Yeah, it wasn't the send-off he expected. Happy retirement party, I guess. One comment says, "We had a very corrupt executive VP who was retiring. He was once my boss, and his admin assistant was going around the different departments and sections trying to get goodbye and good luck videos for his retirement party. No one wanted to contribute as we had nothing good to say. Really ticked off the assistant. When his retirement party arrived, not one of us rank and file attended. I heard he was very embarrassed. He had worked for the company almost 40 years. Yo, it's clear that time doesn't stand for jack if you're a crappy person to other people. Serves them right. Anyway guys, we're going to leave that there. That's it from me today. Hope you enjoyed those stories. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good day. Cheers.